Assalamu alaikum. Greetings, everyone. My name is Zainab Khan, and on the behalf of Canadian Pakistani Support Group Association, I warmly welcome all of you to this live webinar session. But before I talk about the webinar topic, I would like to acknowledge the land we are residing in. We honor and acknowledge Treaty 7 lands, which is the traditional territory of Siksika, Kainai, Sutina, Pikani, the Nakoda, and an important trading center for the Métis of Region 3 of Métis Nation of Alberta. We recognize that we are treaty people and have a responsibility to understand our history, the spirit and intent of Treaty 7 so that we can honor the past, be aware of the present, and build a future of peace, friendship, and understanding for a just and caring future. So today we have come up with a very important topic, and we have previously talked about this topic at multiple forums: healthy families, safe parenting, healthy households. These are the foundational blocks for healthy and safe communities. And as a community member, we have a role to play as part of our families and communities. Today, we'll be talking about our role in building safe communities and Islamic perspective. And I have come across this discussion on diverse platforms and forums, but this would be those rare opportunities to learn about the Islamic perspective of building safe communities. And I'm really excited to introduce our esteemed guest speaker for this webinar, who will help us understand our role in building safe communities from an Islamic perspective. So today I have with me Brother Imam Sadique Pathan. Imam Sadique Pathan has bachelor's degree in Islamic theology and a master's in social work. He is a registered social worker and has worked as a counselor and therapist for the past 22 years. He is an active member of the local community and advocates for anti-racism policies and works in fostering interfaith relationship as local imam. We are humbled and honored to have him as a speaker today. Brother Imam Sadique Pathan, welcome to the webinar. Thank you for joining us today and share your valuable time, knowledge, and experience with us.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much, Sister Zainab. It's an honor, a privilege to be part of this conversation. I know Muskin, the organization, is doing some amazing work, and what you're setting out to do today is something that we need to continue doing. And I applaud the efforts that you guys have, tirelessly done in Champion. And I thank you so much, and I really hope that you guys continue doing the great work that you're doing.
Thank you very much for your kind words. And Brother Sadiq Pathan, this month, the month of November in Alberta, it is the month of recognition and prevention of domestic violence and family violence prevention. And as part of it, building safe communities, building safe families is a core and integral component that we should be talking about. So we have some questions that we have planned for the initial part of this webinar, and those questions are actually compiled from the community members who wanted these questions to be answered in this webinar. Additionally, we have some live audience, and the live audience who are watching us on Facebook or YouTube, please do share your questions in the comment section. I'll be keeping an eye on the comment section throughout the webinar, and whatever question comes up in your mind, do share with us, and we would love to answer them throughout the webinar. So we will start our conversation now. And Brother Sadiq, I would start off first. I think you should talk about, and we would love to know more about your role as a counselor and therapist. And then, mashallah, you have knowledge and expertise and experience as an imam, and you work on different topics and different domains, reaching out to the community, talking with you, talking with families. So can you help us understand more about your role for past 22 years as an important member of the community? And then we can start about the topic in
Alhamdulillah.
specific.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much, Sister Zainab, for your kind words and your humbling description. I don't see myself as anything special. I know that part of my journey has been trying to be there for the community in whatever capacity I can. And part of that is being a therapist. I've been doing in my various roles in social work. I've grown into learning more and more about the needs of people, and in the process, learning about myself. And the humbleness that one has to have in seeing the capacities and strengths that individuals have. And that, I guess, started 3 years ago after I graduated. And really, it's from working with children and adults and children's services, seeing the different challenges that families and young people and different age groups, teenagers and parenting needs, and that sort of helped me understand sort of the relationships between the environment and ourselves and all of those things that impact our lives. So that's sort of where I started. It then took me abroad. I studied in Jordan to understand where I really wanted to know was the relationship between our spiritual tradition in Islam and solutions to what we're facing. So while I was satisfied with a lot of the amazing understandings shared through traditional university, learning through social work and the faculty of social work, I came to realize there was something not quite there yet. There were certain questions not answered, especially when it came to dealing with our own community needs. What does Islam say about things like domestic violence in Islam? What are the solutions that Islam offers people who are struggling with addictions or family violence or child and parenting? I wanted to know more about those indigenous traditions that are part of our traditions as Muslims. That took me to study in Jordan, Syria, Palestine, Egypt, and other places, and that's where I took a little bit of a turn in my travels. Then I finished my master's of social work, and then of course I came back very determined to take a role upon as being an imam, to be part of the support system for our community as an imam, and try to provide spiritual mentorship and guidance for our community and our support and the support, but also to focus on individual counseling and family counseling to make sure that I'm there to provide the supports supports for our family as well, that are struggling with depression, anxiety, family violence, all sorts of issues, and to try to offer both the therapeutic modalities found in social work, clinical social work therapy, but also to make sure that we offer something that's relatable to Muslims, and that is sort of that Islamic perspective to the needs of our community.
Wonderful. MashaAllah, Brother Sadiq, you've been through that learning journey, and then from that experience, you are helping the community, and community is reaching out to you because they know that you have the experience of the spiritual and the religious knowledge, as well as a social worker and therapist, you have those expertise. So they come with that faith and trust, and you help them out. So I think that we can start our next with our conversation and the next question. And for the audience who joined us just now, so we have started our conversation on the webinar, our role in building safe communities and Islamic perspective with Brother Imam Sadique Pathan. And if you have any questions, you can leave it in the chat box, and from the comment section, I can pick up those comments and convey those questions to the guest speaker. So my next question is that what exactly is the Islamic perspective of safe communities? If one visualizes a safe and healthy community from an Islamic perspective, what would it look like?
That's an amazing question, and it's the first time I've ever had such a beautiful question posed in an interview. So I thank you for that. It's something really I had to contemplate that before. I think, I guess that question I think can be broken down into different aspects. First, safety of the individual and who they are. I think that's a very important place. What does that safety mean? It means that they need to thrive. They need to thrive in a healthy environment that allows them to grow and reach their physical developmental sort of stages and their potential, to reach their intellectual potentials as well, and their spiritual potentials. And that can only happen where there are those supports within the environment that allow for that. So that safe space is very much that. What does it provide? For example, the physical environment that allows a person to grow in a positive way. Does it allow them opportunities to grow? And these things are all part of that safe environment. So I think on an individual level, that can be provided obviously through a home environment that is filled with love, care, sense of belonging, sort of those attachments, sort of reassurances from the family system with the individual for the, let's say, for that person. And that could be done in the aspect of faith, of course, but that family unit is such a sacred place for a person to grow. And I think that's where it starts. It starts in that family unit, and of course, it then extends to the community, so the family system, the greater community, and whatnot. And then it expands even to society, greater society at large.
So I think that's the starting point. We talked about the safe space and the safe space of a family, and when we talk about that sacred space and the main unit, the foundational unit, I think that that is one point that we should be looking at. But then, if we talk about from the family, and I talk about myself as a member of the community, if I am Zainab Khan, a part of a community, do I have any role as an individual that I can play in building safe and healthy communities? Is there any Islamic perspective, any teachings, any principles that I should be keeping in mind that, okay, this is the Islamic perspective for me, the guidance as a community member, this is the role that I can play then?
It's an excellent point, and and to build on that safe space, absolutely. In a time where, in the time of the Prophet Muhammad peace be upon him, the safe space was actually, especially in Medina, the masjid itself. The masjid was a safe place where people would come, men, women, children, would come and share their concerns. They would joke. There would be a safe space to be who they were in front of the best of all creation, the Prophet Muhammad peace be upon him. And in that time, all questions were accepted, and the Prophet peace be upon him showed through his heavenly example that no question was a bad question, nor any feeling did he shun away. People would say such things that you would have thought that even the companions of the Prophet, peace be upon him, were very, like, sometimes very emotional. How dare such a question? How dare such a statement be said? And the Prophet, peace be upon him, would say, take it easy. Leave them alone. Leave him alone. You know? And I think that's the first thing, is to make sure that we offer a space of non-judgmental space where we're not going to judge anyone.
MashaAllah.
You're coming there as an individual. We should offer our community members this sense that I'm not judging you. Secondly, the Prophet, peace be upon him, in his many examples, showed us this profound way of helping a person come to their own understanding what they should do. And this is empowerment. This is essentially the central aspect of empowerment. A young teenager came to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and said, "I give me permission to commit zina or fornication, a relationship outside of marriage." And the Prophet, peace be upon him, never said, "Hey, don't do it." He didn't come into giving a quick answer. He said, "Oh, would you accept such a behavior for your aunt, your sister, your mother? Would you wish that would be permitted for them?" And he said, "Of course not. Never, Prophet, peace be upon him." Then he says, "That what is it that you wish to use?" No, I swear by God. He came to the conclusion, this young boy, this teenager, "I will never do such a thing." It's such a beautiful conversation of empowerment. So one is non-judgmental, the other one is empowerment. And I think the third thing that offers safe space is to make sure that we ask the next thing, which is, what is it that we can do? Genuinely asking the community members, what is it, or an individual, what is it that we can do? What would you like us to do? We are very quick to offer solutions without really listening. And so that's the other part, is that listening comes with asking things like, what can we do? How can I help? And those are things. And I think those are the starting blocks of building a safe space within the community.
I think that was very insightful answer. And talking about non-judgmental part, I think we come across situation where we observe a certain, maybe a family conflict or something, and as a bystander, as a person who's outside that family, at times we do not feel any responsibility to help them. But I think if we just make sure that we do not judge them, we do not derive some conclusions or have some assumptions made up, that would be the first point. And that's when the starting point from our own selves kind of starts, and then we can build on the next aspects of it, the other acceptance level, the forgiveness, and then offering support, and then helping, and the other components of it. So I think the safe space, and then the three important parts, the non-judgmental, the empowerment part, and I think these were key points to do it. So I think starting from the individual role, and then we have the next question around the Islamic perspective of healthy families. And the family has different family members, and we are living together. And then there are some rights and responsibilities of family members, of husband and wife, and children and parents. So I would like you to talk about the Islamic perspective and role and responsibilities and the rights of family members towards each other. If there are some expectations from the different gender roles, but at the same time there are certain rights that has been given by Islam to wife, to husband, to even children, being parents, being grandparents. If you could talk more about it to help our
Yes.
audience understand those rights.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, to your point, and I thank you so much, mashallah. You have an amazing way of really tying up all the different points. May Allah bless you. Uh, the rights and responsibilities are outlined wonderfully within the Holy Quran and also the prophetic tradition. So we're able to sort of define it. So could I just ask one moment to just tell my family member to
Sure.
sorry about that. That's the
No
beauty of
problem.
live
Yeah,
interviews.
families.
Um, so as I was saying, so the prophetic tradition and the Holy Quran Kareem both help us understand those roles. So these roles are all about not about restricting. It's actually about giving everyone a sense of clarity when we are faced with very sometimes difficult situations as to how best to manage a family. So it's not meant to be micromanaging human beings. It's not there to restrict them. Rather, it's there to really give them the environment, the safe space to grow. So one of the things is the rights and responsibilities in Islam. I'd like to just share a verse from the Holy Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah Almighty, He says in the Holy Quran that the believers, both men and women, are guardians of one another. So that's the first foundation. There's no sense of competition as sometimes there's this understanding, nor is there a sense of superiority. Uh, they encourage good and forbid wrong and evil. They establish prayer. They pay alms, tax, and they obey Allah Almighty and His Messenger. It is they who will be shown Allah's mercy. Surely Allah is Almighty and All-Wise. So what we gain from that understanding is we get this understanding of, first of all, that there's a partnership. The role of men and women is to make sure that there is, as the Quran also mentions, that they're like a garment over one another, and that they protect one another. In another verse, it says, وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. Shana Baba. Shana. Shh, shh, shh. Uh, okay, okay, Papa's on that. Okay. Sorry about that, guys.
No problem.
So, وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً, which essentially means that there's compassion and mercy as elements. These are foundational premise of relationship. The other thing that is governing all relationships, especially with the family, no one can do oppression on one another. Absolutely forbidden.
Okay.
The whole Quran, if it was to describe two elements, believe in God, believe in Allah, and be good to creation. It summarizes the whole Quran. If you want to look at two things, the idea of oppression is so deep and so repeated. Look at my tutorial. Okay, it's so repeated within the Holy Quran. It's actually emphasizing this. So when we look at families, it's about maintaining respect, the honor of each other, to know that they're both guardians of each other, and furthermore, not oppressing one another. So those are I would say the foundational, and of course love and mercy and compassion are part of that. So why am I mentioning all of this? Because it leads us to the discussion of domestic violence, which would actually outline clearly in the Islamic principle any harm that's caused to anyone is unacceptable in Islam, and it sort of goes against the principles right from the foundation. I'm just going to change my location, if you can bear with me, just to ensure that
Yes.
there's no interruption. Oh, you're going to go take, okay. Jen, no, no, this is my.
So, our live viewers who just joined us, we were talking about the rights and responsibilities of family members, the wife, the husband, children, in an Islamic perspective. And our guest speaker, Imam Sadique Pathan, he was talking about that all across different aspects and different chapters of Holy Quran, the one thing that is clear is that no oppression is acceptable towards others. So let it be family members, let it be other creation. So the mercy, the love, the care, that is the foundation of it. So again, while our guest speaker joins us and sets up, I would like to mention again that if you have any question for us that you would like us to answer, our guest speaker is live with us. You can share with us. Sidra, thank you for joining us and thank you for your comment. If you have any question that you want to ask about the topic, do share with us. We would love to answer it. So I think that um, what we have come across in all of these conversation points, and one thing that was consistent was about safe space. And safe space is the core and foundation throughout the communities, individual or families. So I think I'll move on to the next question. So I'll give a few minutes to Brother Sabik.
Okay. I'm just trying to sort this out. Sorry if you can bear
Sure.
with me. This is what we call improv and hiding from a 2.5-year-old or
Yes.
3-year-old. She has she has full control of the house, so that's
Yes.
there's no oppression there. She definitely runs the show.
Yes,
Uh,
yes. And then that's how we come across different situations in our family on day-to-day basis. And the way we deal with it is as parents, it gives out those messages to the children,
yes,
how to the love, the kindness part and everything.
yes,
So, Brother Sadiq, I think that my next question would be that you emphasize throughout your conversation about safe space. Let it be the safe space for an individual, for a family, for children, in a community. But what if that safe space is not there? What if in a family that safe space is kind of affected by conflict, a situation? And we have come across unfortunately some situation where our sisters have been in those relationships for years, but just because they thought that stepping out won't be a good decision, they won't have any support. Or, and in addition to that, if we talk about the general the perspective and the support that they won't get, or if they would be disobeying the principles or values of Islam if they step out of that relationship. If you can talk more about it, that if there is a family conflict, what are the best ways, according to the Islamic teachings, to resolve it? How one should come across those situations and solve them?
so Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, may Allah bless you for such a question. And I guess I'm sorry some of the interruption there in the
No
background
worries.
there. Um, Building on what you've just said, and I guess continuing with what I was saying about the roles and ways. Remember the foundations, as I shared, mawaddatan wa rahma. These are all Quranic verses. They're not there to be debated. They're all there. So as Muslims, we consider these things clearly sort of challenged because they're from considered a divine revelation. So that's building on from this. When we look at when there's oppression at home, so
Mhm.
this is where a spouse, and this is where we find often one spouse is abusing another, and more often than not, it's the husband abusing the wife. Now, there are lots of things that are to be considered here. Some of it's, I would say, cultural understanding. And sometimes culturally, there's this taboo of speaking out about what happens in your own home. So there's this unspoken rule, you don't tell anyone what's going on in your own home. Even parents, when they see and bid their children off to marriage, they'll tell their daughters, don't say anything to anyone. You are now out of our home and you've left. You are now part of
Yes.
his family, and this is a cultural thing that you often see within a lot of Muslim families. Another cultural aspect that becomes a challenge is where people may have, some, let's say, family households may have been exposed to domestic violence, where they saw, let's say, in some cases, a father hitting their mother, or a relative, a male relative hitting a female relative, even a brother hitting a sister, and this idea that somehow it's okay. So
Yeah.
culturally, they say, sometimes they'll say it's okay, it's permitted. Then sometimes, even above that, they'll try to find a verse or a tradition of the Prophet, peace upon him, to justify it. And of course, this is an absolute manipulation and an abuse of the faith sort of traditions, and a use or an attempt to use it as a tool of control. And this is against the Islamic tradition, because the Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, when he was described by his beloved wife, Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha, may God be pleased with her, she said he never raised a hand to any woman. Look at that description. To any woman, and unto any person that was his, let's say, someone who was a worker under him, or a maid, or a servant that worked under him in his household, meaning household, like people who were hired help to help around the house, is what is the equivalent to today. And she said he never. That means he never hurt any female. He never raised his hand to them, and he never hurt anyone that was under his guardianship care. That is a principle that we anyone who says I have the right to harm my wife because she's under my guardianship, it's totally been totally dispelled. This is a it's a wrong understanding, and it has to be challenged. Also, the understanding that the Quran, when the verses are recited that الرجال, the men are al-qawamun, that they are the maintainers of nisa. So this sometimes is wrongly translated as men are superior over women,
Mhm.
or there's fadl, there's favor of man over woman, as is in another verse of the Holy Quran. This is not referring to intelligence, nor spirituality, nor anything else except in terms of responsibilities. And it doesn't mean that the man gets an easy ride. It's actually a harder role in the aspect of what's expected of him. He needs, as a carer and guardian of the family, be the one. He has to be the one that protects the family first of all from any harm. It's his role. It's not something he can back away with. Basically, these are obligations. Another
Yeah.
obligation is that he financially provides all the needs that are basic needs of any spouse and the children. Meaning you can't just walk out and say, I don't want to work. No, I don't feel like being that care. No, it's a sanctioned, faith-based sanctioned role. This is what it's meant by maintainers, and this is what is meant by this idea of fadl, or one is favored over the other. That's not favored because they're better, not at all. Favored in terms of there are going to be greater responsibility in some areas. That doesn't mean
Mhm.
that women don't have great roles and superior in other areas. They may be much more in responsibility in a different area. But this responsibility or favor in one area is not saying one is better than the other. It simply means that men in this sphere, in the realm of that part of their life, they have a greater responsibility. There's obviously different responsibilities set out for women as well, that are general expectations, such as being a supportive spouse, just as our husbands are supposed to be a supportive spouse, to maintain not secrecy of oppression, secrecy of any personal intimacy. That goes
Yeah.
both ways. Also, the idea of caring and being loving and compassionate, also outlined in the Quran. Also, being as a mother, the primary care for the children. This is part of the Islamic tradition. When there's oppression, however, when there's this idea that I can, like I just met somebody very recently from our community, the young daughter of this the father that abuses the mother tells the children really point blank, Islam allows this. And she asked me, and I said,
Yes.
this is an abhorrent statement against the tradition of our Holy Quran al Kareem, and it's against the tradition of the Prophet, peace be upon him.
Thank you very much, Brother Sadiq. I think one thing that you emphasized throughout this conversation are the misconceptions, the points where we mix the culture with Islam and presenting it as Islam. And that's the point where the gender roles and gender identities that, okay, talking about it, it's not allowed, it's allowed, and you can, if you have the superiority, you can exercise it, the power, the control part, and a lot of these things that our sisters and brothers, they think that our religious obligation, those are not actually religious obligation. Nowhere in Quran or Ahadith those things are mentioned. Those are just the cultural things that are now just becoming part of the thing that, okay, this is now religion. So I think thank you for highlighting that. And for our viewers, I just want to highlight the part that a lot of things that are the cultural aspects of it that are mixed with the Islamic teachings as well. And that's where the misconceptions and manipulation part exists. So thank you for doing that. And I have one question from Sister Sidra Atik, and her question is that what are the boundaries as a community member? And I think that's somehow linked with our last question as well, that what are the things that are prohibited in Islam to ask about from other members of the community? What we should not be talking about, the questions or pointing out certain other maybe cultural aspects of them, or the way they exercise their religion, or the way they function in their family or stuff like that. So what are those boundaries that we should exercise and we should be careful about?
Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much, Sister Sidra, for a wonderful question as well. The boundaries as a community member of what things are prohibited and stuff that we shouldn't ask. I guess to put another way, what shouldn't we be talking about with community members?
Yes.
Obviously, the rumor mill doesn't help. You know, the idea of did you hear? They'll say, did you hear about so and so?
Yes.
There's no benefit. Or this idea of I think a false sense of concern. Oh yeah, did you hear about so and so? Ah, that's really bad that happened. And the conversation continues, and somebody should ask this, pause and say, well, wait a minute. Am I genuinely talking about this for the purpose of bettering that situation, or is this a good conversation? And all of a sudden it becomes the talk of the town. I think that's one. The other thing is, like, community members, we have a stigma. There's a taboo of asking the question to somebody. I don't think we should have a taboo when it comes to asking and or even talking about domestic violence and abuse. We shouldn't be holding back anymore on that. That should be removed entirely, because that's what's not providing a safe space. If nobody talks about it, well, then there's no safe space. It's
Mm.
going to be this fear of again being judged, fear of being shunned. And as women, unfortunately, within a lot of the traditional cultural norms, they might be blamed even when they're the victims. Oh, surely she deserved it. Astaghfirullah. These are the ignorant statements you hear. But yeah, surely she deserved it. Oh, she mustn't have been doing something.
Mm.
She must have not been a good wife. Oh, it's because she's not a good mother. She's not providing. She's not, and there's no, even when I've seen in some cases where it was known how bad the abuse was, yet there is a community that will go there and they'll continue to talk about it. So I think, to answer your question, I think when there's benefit to speak about something, principally, absolutely, it's something we should. When there's no benefit, where it becomes rumor mill, where it becomes slandering, where it becomes backbiting, where it becomes judgmental,
Yes.
even the perpetrator who is in the wrong, I always believe this, and this is an Islamic perspective. That is sometimes a little bit different than the Western perspective. While a perpetrator might be very terrible in the role as a husband, it is very possible that they might have been very good as a son to their parents. And
Yes.
that's where we look at rehabilitation, restorative roles and opportunities to help the one who is actually the perpetrator of a wrong. We believe in a rehabilitation process. We believe that a person can attain their goodness and the closest to God. We believe that they can also possibly work towards reconciliation with a family member with certain supports and expectations. And I think that's where we need to be careful. We can't, it's prohibited absolutely to throw out labels of this of judgment that they're not Muslim, or they're again, who's to say who's better? We just know principally
Yes.
zulm is absolutely forbidden. Allah says in Hadith al-Qudsi that I have forbade, and Allah Himself says, I have forbade oppression, and I forbid that for my servants, meaning that it's unacceptable. So we know principally that's what we hold on to, and so I hope that answers the question.
That definitely answers the question, and I hope, Sister Sildra, you got the answer. And thank you for answering this important question. So, Brother Sadiq, my next question is about one point that you highlighted in the previous answer, and it was about the parents and children relationship and some of the aspects of it where parents think that they have power and control because they are the guardians and they can say or do, or maybe physical harm, or these aspects of it, these are allowed in Islam. And you mentioned it, but I would like you to re-emphasize on certain points that there are rights of children and there is safe space for children from an Islamic perspective as well. And the way we see it, it needs more clarity on it. And again, the cultural aspect of it, and then the mixing of the with the
Yes.
religion part that comes again. But I would like you to talk about it.
Well, children are such a they're mentioned and described that wealth and children are the ornaments of our zinatul hayat dunya, that they are the beauty, the ornaments of our lives. And and it truly is. So children are seen as a beauty in the perspective of Islam. Also, children are seen as a form of rahmah, mercy. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, we have seen through his example of how he was towards his own children. When we look at, for example, his relationship with his beloved daughter, Lady Fatima radiallahu anha, may God be pleased with her, you see this amazing relationship between a father and daughter, for example, where he would come and he was affectionate. He would embrace. In fact, when Sayyidah Fatima, when she would come, radiallahu anha, to visit him at his home, Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would stand up
Yes,
and
yes,
he would bring his daughter close to him, even as an adult. He would
yes,
joke with his daughter, for example. He would make jokes with her. He would ask her how she was doing. He would console her. He would show so much of interest in her life. He would visit her. He would bring gifts. you know so this is what we know about one aspect. With his grandchildren, we know that he would be very playful with them. He would embrace them, and he would show them such, Hassan al Hussein, so much compassion. When a Bedouin came to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and said, I have 10 children, and this is interesting, he saw the Prophet ﷺ hugging Al Hassan al Hussein, radiallahu anhuma, and he saw them as grandkids playing with them, and he kissed them. Prophet ﷺ was kissing them and embracing them. And this Bedouin said, I have 10 children, and he goes, by God, I haven't even kissed any of them. And the Prophet ﷺ, peace be upon him, said, Man la yarhamu la yurham. He said, whosoever shows no mercy will receive no mercy. Whosoever does not show compassion will not receive compassion. Whosoever doesn't show love, because rahmah encompasses all of these things, that if you don't show love, you never receive it. So the Prophet, peace be upon him, outlined clearly these things. The Prophet, peace be upon him, also uh, outlined in different traditions that it's the right of a child to be given good upbringing. It's the right of a child to receive care, and that he learns, or he or she learns, good etiquettes and manners. that they be given gifts, that they be given praise. The Prophet, peace be upon him, often was, when he spoke, he would always speak in the praise, out acknowledging and validating. He would give even titles to young people and give them roles. For example, when we look at Osama bin Zayd, who was only 15 at the time, he gave him a role to lead. He said, "You're a leader." At the age of 17, Usama bin Zayd was given the leadership, 17, 18 years old, to lead an army. People who were given, and young roles were given roles like, okay, you're going to be the mu'adhin. He saw a young boy making fun of the adhan. The young boy who wasn't Muslim at the time was brought in front of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and said, "Hey, uh, the Sahaba, the companion said, this boy was mocking the adhan while it was being said." The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "Come over here, young man." He was a young, maybe younger teenager, 15, 14. And he says, "Let me hear your voice." So the person started talking. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "You will have a beautiful voice for the adhan." This little boy who was mocking the adhan, not a Muslim at the time, through this beautiful moment of mentorship, uh, said, I love this man. I love what he said." And the Prophet, and then he said, "Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammad." So he declared his faith to Islam. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he appointed him as the mu'adhin as well, with the other mu'adhin, Bilal al-Habashi and whatnot. So we see that this is the tradition. So teaching, love, care, humor, mentorship, empowerment, these are all a part of the prophetic tradition. In terms of hitting, it is forbidden. The Prophet, peace be upon him, was very specific. You cannot leave any injury to any time you're disciplining. So there's discipline. Islam doesn't say there's no discipline. If a child is being misbehaving, it doesn't say that there's no disciplining. Tapping of the hand, or a tapping on the bum as a redirecting, not abuse though. It's funny because even in parenting, when we do parenting workshops, we tell parents we're not taking away your right to be firm with the child. Sometimes children need firmness. They need gentleness, they need firmness, sometimes they're being misdirected, you have to redirect them, get their attention. Never to abuse them though. And clearly principle of all discipline in the home, including relationship between husband and wife, you can never hurt somebody to the point that leaves a mark, which means you can't hurt them.
Yeah.
You can redirect them. You can tap them.
Mm.
How hard do you have to tap to get a mark? It would be you have to injure the person, which means that in Islam it's forbidden. And even in the case of a reference in the Holy Quran, which is wrongly described as Islam allows beating, this is absolutely a monstrosity of an understanding. The whole Quran, when it talks about this verse that it comes, it says, if there's a conflict between, and this is specifically perspective of husband with the wife. So it's the husband complaining about the wife. So the verses are like this. Another chapter discusses the wife complaining about the husband and how to deal with that. And it's beautiful. This specific verses say if a husband feels that his wife is being unjust to him due to attitudes and behaviors and whatnot, and things are now becoming to the point where it's intolerable, then it says sleep on the same bed but sleep on different sides. Cool off period. This is conflict resolution, anger management. Cool off. If after some time you guys are still feeling tension, okay, you guys can't stand to be in the same place. Okay, stay in the home, but different quarters of the home. Subhanallah. It then says, if there's still conflict, bring people that are your mediators that you consider mutually agreed upon, family members or else, otherwise, like a therapist or an imam, mutually agreed upon. Then the verse says, and if that doesn't work, it says in the Quran, the verb of daraba, which means one understanding which is used in expressions to hit. However, in the Quranic beautiful message that you have here, you're seeing every attempt. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, stay away from one another so you cool off. It would not make it wouldn't make logical sense that the beauty of the eloquence of the Quran, as being said, is meaningless. And this is why the scholars say that it does not mean hitting. It means a gesture of tapping to say that now we have reached a serious point where we might have to separate. Why would somebody separate and hit the person to injure them and say, now we're separated? It wouldn't make sense because the next stage would be talking about temporary separation, trial separation, which is the first talaq. So it's something for people to reflect upon, inshallah, and I hope that answers the question as well.
That definitely answers the question. It was such an elaborate and detailed answer with examples, with references. And I think this is where we have to reach back to our imams, our religious leaders who can guide us in a way, okay, these are the steps. And one of the things that you mentioned repeatedly, that there is no oppression acceptable in Islam. There is no hitting allowed, let it be for wife, let it be for children, or any other family member. There's no oppression acceptable at all. So that's one clear message that we are giving out through this webinar. And Brother Sadiq, we are reaching to an end of this beautiful conversation. I learned, mashallah, you have explained so well things and related, taken us back to those teachings. So thank you for doing that. My final question is that in Canada, we celebrate the diversity and we have so many different cultures. We have community members who are exercising their cultures and religion. And as part of that community, what is the Islamic perspective of living in a community where there are different cultures, different religions that are being practiced? And what is our role? How we practice our teachings as part of such a diverse and beautiful community?
What beautiful way to end the discussion. The Quran is very clear. It says that, that indeed Allah has created all of us, from male and female, and then وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا, that He has created us from nations and tribes to get to know one another. The perspective of diversity is celebrated in the Quran. It's about knowing, to be curious. That's why when we look at Islamic history, you see a constant migration of Muslims. The majority of the Muslim world, in fact, where Muslim populations are significant, you find they're minorities, which means that they traveled, they settled, and they enjoyed and they thrived with living in healthy coexistence and beautiful harmony with their neighbors. And Islam has a beautiful description of the rights of your neighbors. It describes, it doesn't matter, it doesn't say Muslim or non-Muslim, the rights of your neighbors. And that the best amongst you, it doesn't say the best amongst you, as the Prophet is khairun nas anfa'um lil muslimin, or that the best people are only the ones who bring benefits to Muslims. No, the best amongst you is the one who brings goodness to all people. All people. So for us, as Muslims, I think we see, and I think it is shown across Canada. Muslims are very comfortable being part of the mosaic. In fact, the pluralistic society is very much in line with Islamic ideals. Everyone respects one another. That we don't impose on any other group. And Muslims, I think, have been very, wonderful in exemplifying. Islam's not here to impose its views on others. It's here to simply say that we're here to add to the mosaic of beautiful Canada, and we will definitely join in the commonality, which is 95% of human experience. And the 5% that is unique is something to be celebrated. Yes, we might not believe in the same traditions of, let's say, certain holidays. That's okay, because let's say we could say we can respectfully say we don't observe this holiday. That doesn't mean we disrespect the people, nor do we condemn anyone who's celebrating it. We say that's your tradition, and we honor it. We say that, whatever you want to do, please do. But Islam has their own traditions, which we can also share. If it's Eid, it's Eid celebration. It's very common. My wife will go to the neighbors and they're from, let's say, Chinese background. She'll go to them. The other one is Vietnamese background, and we give them gifts. Gift giving is universal. And if there's something that Muslims can show and share is when we celebrate, we love to eat, so we love to share. And when we love gift giving as well. And if there's anyone who's non-Muslim listening to this, please do take advantage of
Yes.
the generosity of Muslims, because they love that. They enjoy that. And it is about sharing. And ultimately, Muslims are judged by the way we treat another person, and God will judge us based on that. So we don't look at anyone who's non-Muslim less. In fact, it may be that in our relationship with that person, God will be pleased with us and accept us in His mercy.
SubhanAllah. I think such a beautiful consolidation point at the way, and bringing together all the points together, and the message of peace and acceptance towards, and the care and love. That's our role as a community member, and that's how we can build safe and healthy communities. So we have come to an end, but before we wrap up, I have just one question from Sayyid Naeem Hussain Jafri. And his question is about divorce, and he wants some more answer on it. That what about divorce three times in one go? And this kind of divorce is testified by religious authorities, but Quran says quite differently. And if you can kindly comment on it. And I think you mentioned about it, the steps of it, but if you can just help us understand more specifically about this question, it would give us some clarity.
Thank you so much, Brother Sayyid Naeem Saab. May Allah bless you and your family. Beautiful question. Um, Within the divorce laws in Islam and in the jurisprudence, the fiqh, based on the collection of hadith as well. So the Quran outlines the some aspects of how divorce are. So there's principles, there's a lot of general sort of parameters that we follow. The hadith or traditions that we have, that's the source of specific examples. So that's where we come into examples of some situations where, let's say there was a situation where a Sahaba or a companion uh, delivered the divorce in three, let's say, three times, saying, "Divorce, I divorce you, I divorce you," and it was now, and then another time there may have been somebody else who said divorce three separate times in different sittings. So the scholars then try to bring some understanding based on the different narrations. Some of them came to the conclusion, no, that three times one, if one says it three times all in one sitting, that counts as three separate sittings. So it's that very fine definition. Is it three separate times? And it's argued that, and yes, it is. You're saying it three separate times because you've intended three separate times. Some other scholars have come and said, no, that's not the way we should understand it. We should say that if it's one time, you said it in the moment of anger, it's actually one time. You could say it 100 times in a row, but you said it while you were angry in one moment, so it's only one talaq. The scholars in the Indo-Pak area have followed the view that it's three talaqs at once. Three talaq all in a row count as the three. However, to your point, Said Saab, I think we need to educate our Muslims. They need to be responsible with using the word talaq. This issue wouldn't be an issue if our Muslims or communities understood the weight of talaq. The word is so heavy, it shouldn't be used lightly, even in joking. As to your point, Said Saab, talaq is supposed to be used as stages. So the first talaq is 3 months, or called talaq raja'i, which means the revocable divorce, where if in 3 months we can make it work, my wife and me, we're back together. That's
Yeah.
the whole purpose of it. The one that rushes and says talk like this in a heat of passion is irresponsible. Is irresponsible, and for the most part they regret it. And but
Yes.
you know what? Also, Islam wants to point out, you want to use these words, there are consequences. And that's why men have to learn, on the one hand, and women also have to learn. Sometimes in the heat of moment, maybe asking them, the husband, give me the divorce, give me the divorce. They need to both scale back. They need to both scale back. If we use the divorce in a way that is prophetic, then we understand this beautiful It's all about, look at the conflict resolution I described earlier. Even when you separate, there's time, 3 months. And if you look at it, it follows very much similar to common law, which says if you're separated 1 month, and that's typically the way the three talaqs work. The first one is 3 months. The next one you can wait another 6 months, and then after the last one is almost a year. It allows for the family, the couples to get together and learn and work it out to reconcile. I think to Said Saab's point, I think it's people are can be very naive, and I think using this bravado of machismo and masculinity to sort of show their power. But I can honestly say in my experience, those who have rushed without thinking it through regret it. So I hope that answers at least different aspects of the question.
Jazakallah khair, Sadiq. I think that you explained starting from the point that the different narrations and how it reaches to a certain point. And Sayyid Naeem Hussain Jafi Sahib, he actually mentioned and commented that it was a nice response and he has thanked you. So I think this was a very, very meaningful, insightful session for me. I learned so many things. There are so many valuable lessons. So once again, on the behalf of CPSC, all the viewers who joined us today, thank you for your time. Thank you for the knowledge.
Jazakallah.
I think this was a very beautiful gift in this month of recognition and prevention of family violence, the ways to resolve a conflict. We often forget those things and we just get so emotional and so impulsive, and then we reach a point where we regret ultimately and eventually, but going back is at that time it's too late. And that there are teachings every day, every single day of life, and those are the beautiful teachings we can go back to. So once again, thank you very much. Thank you to all the viewers who share their comments, their feedback, their questions. So and we will be coming up with some more series, inshallah, in the future. So thank you for your time and take care
Jazakallah.
and good evening.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.